Okay, so we're going to do a snowman painting today, and as it is December and it has snowed overnight, so it's quite appropriate. I've got a piece of Saunders waterford, and it's slightly smaller than normal. I've zoomed in the camera slightly just so you can see what's going on. Just because this is, I don't know, it's going to be slightly looser, and it's going to be easier to get the broad brush strokes on a smaller piece of paper. So I've drawn out what I want to paint, but I've made it up from 2 photos and invented a couple of bits. Oops. So I kind of like the background with this one. It's got some nice trees with some snow on, a little house, undulating snow banks in the foreground, but I didn't like it. This is a bit too cutesy for me. And so I'm going to replace the snowman with this one here. Which is kind of cutesy, but I just like it better. And so I put the snowman in. I made a slight change. I didn't like the bow tie, so I've given him a nice red scarf, just because that's what I wanted to do. And I've placed him next to the trees. I think it works well. He's not bang in the centre, he's slightly offset. There's some trees over here which will give some weight to that side of the painting. So I think we should be good. Right, let's have a think about how we're going to tackle this. I'm just going to paste this one up here. Now, let's start with the snow, I think. Let's start with the snow. We've got a few very dark darks on this. So you've got the boot, the hat, the face, and the dark bits of the trees over here. But I think we should start with putting some shadows on the snow, because the white snow is the bulk of the painting. And I'd like to get that in first. Normally I wouldn't do this. I would leave these sort of very high values till last, but usually we have more mid and more dark values in, and we don't in this painting. So I'm going to start with the snow. Right, so the light's coming from over here, so we're going to have shadows on our snowman. It's going to be a shadow cast by the hat. There's also a shadow cast by the boot in here. There's going to be a shadow of the snowman on the snow here. Let's do that first. And then we're going to put in some background blues for the snow. If I bring this one down, it's almost like water the way the shadows on the snow go. And they're kind of not quite as blue. They're bluer in the other photo, but it's almost like waves. And they have this kind of, I don't know what you'd call that, almost like a feather shape. They go to a point and then they fade out, and the darkest bit is on this side. So but let's do the snowman snow pieces itself first. Now, normally we'd match very carefully these colours, but for snow it kind of looks, snowy photographs can look kind of strange, and this is a fun piece, so I'm not going to be as careful and precise as I usually am with that kind of colour. So I'm going to use a bit of cerulean. You could also use a bit of cobalt, I think, for snow. Ultramarine would work at a pinch. Phthalo blue is probably just too strong, and it's hard to control with these light values. So I would prefer to use ultramarine rather than cerulean. And it's not particularly dark, but it's lighter than a mid value, so we don't want it to be too dark. I'm just going to try a little swatch. Okay, so that looks about right. It's probably between a 6 and a 7. Now I've got this brush with my colour, And you can see it's flowing around the palette quite nicely, which means it's a nice high value. I'm going to have a brush, damp brush handy, because we want these edges to be smooth. Apart from, there's two that we don't want to be smooth. There's this one underneath the hat, and then there's this one next to the boot. So I might start, and this is actually kind of warm in there, but I'm gonna leave that for now. I'm gonna actually start with this one underneath the hat. And this is a hard edge. It's going to be one of the few hard edges of shadows we're going to have. So start him in, and then put some colour on this edge, and then smooth just the bottom bit. And it's looking mighty dark, as it always does when we do this with these kinds of... I just want a little bit of shadow behind that nose, I think, too. And just smooth that out. I want this hat shadow to be sharp, but everything else is going to be smooth. Now we could put some variation in here, just to show a little bit of lumpiness in the snow. And then we come down to the next bobble. This is going to be pretty uniform on this side, but again I'm going to put in a stripe and then smooth that out so it gives a nice rounded form. And just a little bit of shadow, and this is going to be fairly hard edge shadow, just underneath that scarf. Actually, I'm going to soften that. Like so. Yeah, okay. That's good. And the same for this bottom piece. Colour goes on. And smooth that out. I'm going to leave that bit for now. And smooth that edge so it blends out. I know there are some shadows behind these buttons, but I'm going to leave those for now. And the last thing is going to be this hard edge shadow for the boot. There's a little bit of light that comes in there. That fades out this way. There we go. And it looks very dark right now. But we will go slightly darker in certain areas. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We might go in when we right at the end, just put in some very, very subtle shadows, just off white, maybe a little bit more. You can see that there is some value variation in there, which we might put in. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is do the snow behind the snowman. And the most important bit is this piece over here, which will define the shape of the right hand side of the snowman. And we can do that by putting in darks here. So this little piece, I'm going to start it dark as though it's a shadow of the snow. And that defines the side of his middle part of his body. And then just smooth it out. Damp brush, just water, not very wet at all. I might just think it should be slightly darker towards the bottom. Add a little bit more in there. And on I'm sort of picking and choosing. How do I want this snow to go here? I think I'm going to go and then smooth it out. Just so it looks like the snow is coming over, it's rolling over, there's a little divot in there. And I think I'll put another piece just back here. Just to give that just a little bit of form. Okay, I'm going to just take it slightly lighter. We're going away from the snowman now. It's going to make it slightly lighter. And one more of these little leaf-shaped pieces. Soften that top edge. Now, we're not putting any colour into our snow here apart from the blue, which I'm okay with. Alright, just softening up a couple of those edges just so they're not looking too harsh. And while we're here, let's put in the roof of this house. Now I've intentionally left this side white, so when I put in the blue snow over here, and there's a slight white piece just at the bottom. I think it fades out slightly. Just put that piece of snow in. A little few marks for the trees. Probably come back and put in some darks back here too. Just to give it a bit of interest back there. Okay, alright. Now, let's do this left-hand side. We have the actual shadow of the snowman there. And we also have the shadows of the snow. Now, the shadow of the snowman is darker than this side. And it's pretty much darker, apart from this, it's pretty much darker than anything else. So let's just put in some, just these pointy gradient marks. I'm going to put one that starts just at the side of his body, and I'm doing that so he's kind of joined on to the landscape. I'm joining my darks together so he's joined onto the landscape and it looks as though he actually sits there. And I don't want too many of these, just want enough to make it look like, we want this to be the centre of interest, we don't want everything else to be the centre of interest. So I'm just going to put in just a few more places where I just want to make it look like snow is in shadow. And I might pull some of those edges just to stop it looking like stripes. Right, now I think we need to put this shadow in. It's very slightly darker. I don't want it hugely darker. And I'm kind of making this up as long as it's in the right direction. I'm okay. It's not dark enough quite, but it'll have to do for now. There's a little shadow on the left hand side of this boot. And probably a little bit just underneath the base. Put a bit more pigment there to darken that. Just around the base. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, I think he's looking kind of cool. Now, I don't know that there's much more we need to do with the snow. I want to do something in this foreground. I think just maybe just a very light swoop of colour. And then soften that out as much as I can. I don't want it to be too distracting, but I do want something down there. I think that might be too distracting. It's very smooth snow, usually. And it's just a little something at the edges. I'm getting slightly paler. You can kind of make this up as you go along. I think that will be okay. I'm not sure about that foreground piece. I think it might need something connecting it. So I'm just gonna take a damp brush. I'm just gonna connect this. It's gonna get blossomy that, but that's okay. Just want this to be slightly looser and my edges to be slightly less rigid. Okay, right, I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to put a little bit over this side. I don't think it needs much. And as you go away from the centre of interest, I'm kind of making it less contrasty. I need a cleaner brush for that. Right, okay. I think I'm going to leave that. It's all a single blue. We could have put more colour into this. It's very hard to do from a photo because photos tend to, I mean certainly these ones are very flat colour in there. And you can kind of see how the colour changes as it goes over the top. It's a lot warmer as it goes to the crest. But we haven't done any of that. Oh, I'm actually getting some blossoms here, which I think I might quite like. Oh, actually there's one last piece that I put in here. I want the line of my trees to be slightly higher, which means a line of snow here. Fade that out. And then again, damp brush, and it's always the top edge. It's usually the top edge that you're smoothing. Okay, right. I think for now, I think snow-wise, I think we've certainly done with the first pass. And even that alone, it certainly looks like a snowman, which is always a good sign in a snowman painting. I'm going to put him on pause and let him dry. and then we'll come back and I will decide what we're going to do next. Okay, so I just have to stand back, and I'm not too horrified, which is always a good sign. And he's fairly dry. I think he's dry enough to work on. And what do we work on next? I'm going to leave this guy to last. We could work on the trees, or we could work on the snowman himself. I think we're going to do the snowman himself. I want to do this first because it's the centre of interest, because I don't want these to be too distracting. So let's put some darks in on our snowman. Right, let's start at the top with his hat. His hat is very dark, so let's make up dark. And I'm going to use actually a synthetic pointy brush so I can get all the bits of detail right. I'm going to use some ultramarine. And it's a fairly dry brush for this. I'm actually going to use ultramarine and burnt umber in here. Now on the photo we can't see that there is really any value change between the shadow and the light side, but I suspect there probably is. We should give it some, I think. Yeah, come on. Right, now, and I'm just gonna be fairly careful with this. I'm not going to lose any edges on this hat, I don't think. But I might leave some, well, I am leaving some pieces of white paper. So I can go back in a minute, it should still be wet, and blend those together with a damp brush, and it will give me a little bit of value change. It's not really what we're seeing. I think it will give us a more interesting painting surface. We could even put in a bit of colour in there, drop in some colour to make those darks a little more interesting. Okay, and I'm just going to risk softening the underside of his hat so it merges into the snow. I just want that to be soft. I don't want it to run so it goes everywhere, which I might have done. Just want to make that change between the hat and the snow. It's too much. Just slightly indistinct. Okay, now let's put in, let's use up the rest of our darks actually. So let's put in his eyes. Now if you look at his eyes, there's actually a little highlight. I don't know if there really would be in real life. So I'm just gonna leave a little bit of paper. And if they're not distinct enough, when we look at it, that was still wet. At the end, we can add in a bit more. Oh, now I've got a fingernail mark in there. Right now, if I was doing this and the video wasn't on, I would put in the shadows of those buttons right now, but I'm doing one colour at a time, so I'm not going to. Right, now I'm going to add in a bit of burnt sienna to lighten it up a bit, and I'm going to do the arms. In some ways we should maybe wait until we've done the sky for these, but I want to see what they look like. And again, the paint is fairly wet and I'm not painting everything. and I'll go in with a damp brush and join those bits together. I'll give a slight value change and I'll make it read a lot better. And just having a thick dark line. Oh, doesn't it look nice? Oh, looks very nice. Let's do his left hand one. Now we've got this wreath as well, so I'm going to just do the bits I can see. Doesn't have to be super accurate over this side. There we go. Right, now we've got his red band to do. I'm just looking around. Let's put a little bit of this chimney pot on. It's got snow on the top, so it's just really a couple of marks. And inside of this house roof. And just a little bit of the side of the house. And again, I'm leaving bits of white paper to show through, just so that when you look at it, your brain does some heavy lifting and connects all these little dots together into actual things. Right, okay. Now this boot down here, a bit red, isn't it? Is it meant to be a Santa boot? Does Santa have red boots? I'm not sure. Right, let's just clear the palette. And I'm going to stand back and have a look. And then we'll have a think about the next piece to do. Okay. Right. So, I'm very tempted to put the colour in, but I think let's hold back. Let's do these trees. We've got the darks in, which is apart from the wreath, which is fine. We've got the hat and the face, etc. Let's have a go at these trees. These trees, I think, are actually going to be the trickiest things for us to get right. Luckily, they're not the main event, so we don't have to be too precious about them. Right, now our trees, I'll bring that down. There's all this snow on this right hand side, and that's where the lightest part of the snow is. The snow does it's slightly darker on the left hand side because it's in shadow, and then there's these pieces of the tree which are very, very dark. We've got three main values in there, and where the dark of the tree is, you've got these little pieces of snow in there, so we've got to somehow make up a dark green and paint around the snow. So I haven't drawn anything in for this, so let's see how this goes. So we need I need a dark green. That's dark blue green. Now if you have phthalo blue and burnt sienna does make a very nice dark green. I don't have any phthalo right now, so I'm going to use, that's far too much black. I'm going to use lemon yellow and black to start with, which will give me a dark green, but it's a very olive green. And I'm going to put in some cobalt, I think. to make it slightly bluer. That makes a much nicer bluer dark green, like so. Right, now let's have a look at these trees. I'm going to tackle this one here first, which is here on my painting. Now, I just want to see where the main darks are. I'm just going to put in, maybe a bit too much, a bit too wet, that. Dark marks where I can see the underside of the tree is that hasn't got snow on it. And it's going to look weird to start with. I'm kind of squinting my eyes just to see where these pieces are. Whoop! Oh, that's not help, is it? Well, I'm going to have to live with that. I'm also mindful of that there's another tree coming out over here. So I'm putting green pieces on. It comes up there. So a few little dark pieces just up here. This is kind of tricky, isn't it? Right, now this tree comes down here. These dark green pieces start on this tree over here. I'm looking just at the darks, where the darks are. Alright, and I'm just going to do a little bit. So I've got a brush in my mouth. Just going to do a little bit with a damp brush, just to smooth some of these white pieces together. It is in shadow, this bit, so it's not going to have huge amounts of contrast. Yeah, this is definitely the hardest bit of the picture. Let's look up here. This is kind of snowy. There's too much contrast in my dark pieces. I don't know if that's going to work yet. So this white stripe down here is this kind of coming down here. And if you see, there's the very light side of the snow, and then there's the blue side. So we'll go back in afterwards and put that in. And just see where that is. Right, darks. I started with this one also because I wanted a bit of practice. On the left hand side, which is not centre of interest, just to see how it would go. Just some over this side. It's a white piece. Almost like paws, these bits of snow on the ends of branches. Right, now, how's that? That's not looking so bad, actually, considering I had no idea how that was going to turn out. Actually, while I've got this green, where's my other? Actually, no, I'll leave that. We'll do that in a bit. Let's not try and do too much at once. Right. Now, I may want to soften some of these pieces. Yeah, I'm not so unhappy with it. Let me just clean the palette. And let's put the shadow side of the snow. So these are the green bits, the actual green bits of the tree showing through. And now we're going to put in the blue shadow side of the smear. Which is the same colour mixture as our snow down here. Actually, mine might be a bit green. I can't tell. Cerulean, a bit of cobalt. That'll probably do me actually. I don't want it to, I still want the snow to read as white, which means it's got to be lighter than the dark green. I think I'm going to soften as I go. It might be too dark. And when you do this, remember it's pretty much the left-hand side of the snow. It's going to be in shadow, and so will be blue. So don't do too much on the right-hand side. That might need. This is another tree over here, isn't it? Doesn't have to read exactly as another tree. If our subject were trees in snow, it'd probably be a lot more particular, but it's not. I'm also taking the blue into the sparkles that I've left. Smooth that side. I'm putting a lot of attention onto this, I have to say. I'm not sure it deserves it. Right, now it's actually quite a lot of blue in this tree at the top. Also this one. Gonna have to be careful when we do our sky. We don't lose that. Just on the left hand side of all the white bits. hoping as well. Just making the right hand side slightly better defined, because that's kind of like the humpy bit of the snow. Snow that sits on top of the branches. Now here, this is all blue snow. Again, define that. I have no idea if this is going to work particularly well. I'm just going with what I'm seeing, which is really not a bad way to go. Now, here. This piece, probably a little bit of blue down there. And just a little bit of blue on this side. I'm getting to look a bit like mountains, which I really didn't want to look like. And blue here. Boy, I've lost all my white now. This is very tricky. It is meant to be a nice loose painting, so there we go. Okay, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. That's not so bad. I'm not just too disappointed with that. Right. It's just this piece over here. Standing back. Yeah, I can live with that. I don't like this white ski slope, but I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to wiggle that up a bit and just put a few more darks in, I think, just to give it a bit more definition. Okay, right, now let's put some colour on him. Let's put some of this hat band in. Now, where's it gone? Here it is. Very dark in here. Same colour as the bow tie. I'm going to make it slightly redder, I think. I'm going to mix up my colours. I'm just going to use them straight from the palette. So this is my orangey red. I'm going to put on the right hand side, and as I go across, move it into that pinkish red. Dot it around a bit, and then a little burnt umber and ultramarine for the very dark side. A few dots. I'm not being particularly careful with that. This might take a little bit of colour out of that, just to lighten it up a tad. Okay, now a nice orange for his nose. I'm going to use some cadmium orange. You can mix up an orange between your lemon yellow and your orangey red, cadmium red or vermilion or something. So I'm going to paint it in like so, but I'm going to darken him up slightly towards the base with some of my orangey red, I think. Just means basically dropping in. Maybe something slightly darker. Okay, and now we have his scarf, which I'm going to do again, like his hat band. Start over this side, orangey red. I'm going to slap in some cadmium orange while I'm here. Let's put some cadmium orange up here. And a little bit of pinkish red going into his. I'm just using slight changes in value to show the change in form here. Could probably be a little darker underneath. It's going to be fairly dark on the left hand side. This piece here. And nice and bright. I'm just going to leave a little sliver of white there. So I'm going to come back in with a damp brush to give that some value change. I'm not being particularly careful with modelling here. I want this in because it's a beautiful bright colour. It's a little bit of darker colour. Oh yes. This paint is more about, I don't know, paint texture and paint quality on paper than it is anything else. Let's do his boot. Alright, I'm just checking. So this boot has got grey fur on the top. Let's do some grey fur. And we want to, so it's going to have some grey fur, so it's shadow side over here. And then a little bit to show the inside. I'm just going to pull that across. Just to give it a little bit of form. I don't think we need to put much detail into this for it to read correctly. Now, I'm going to make this a slightly browner version of the red we used for his scarf and hat. Add in some more brown and a little blue just to darken that up on the shadow side. I'm hoping that will read as a boot. So there. Okay. Right, let's just step back again. Oh, yeah, I think he looks like a snowman, doesn't he? Those trees are pulling together a little better now. Good. So we got this wreath now. We need to make up our dark green again, which I had some yellow, a little bit of black, to make this kind of olive green. And then some, which I think I put in cobalt. Alright, it's not quite as dark as those tree greens. Now, we need to leave a little bit of space for the baubles and the ribbons, and also make the edges of this nice and irregular, so it means leaving a fair bit of white paper and lots of little jiggity-jaggedy brush marks. You can make the baubles bigger than they actually are, actually, and I think it will read fine. So just leave little holes for the baubles. I kind of dot the paint around them, and then nice jagged edges. Yeah, that's going to read fine, isn't it? No, very little colouring in here. Making sure my edges are jagged. There we go. And pure red paint. I would use an orangey red for this rather than a pinkish red. I'm just gonna dot in something that's a bit thicker. Just a few marks that make it look like ribbons and stuff. The paint is still wet, so it's going to run a little bit, which I don't think matters particularly, as long as you can still see that there's red. Doesn't have to be particularly faithful to the photo either. Right, I don't want to overdo that. How's he looking? Oh, he's looking very festive, isn't he? Very festive. Right. I think we're very close, actually. There's a couple of things. I know I said I wasn't really bothered by the form on this scarf, but this bit is annoying me. Just want to make it look as though there's two pieces. Just a little bit of darkness. I might actually soften that slightly and get that colour to run down. We don't do a lot of edge softening in these classes because it's just one more thing you have to think about, and I think it's really hard to think about that before you've got everything else straight. Alright, well, these trees we need to put some sky in. I do want to do something with these trees. I'm just going to put it on pause, let them dry completely, and then we'll come back and reassess. Okay, so we're back. And I am fairly pleased so far. I need to put some sky in. So let's do that now, because as well as being sky, it will have also a function in the painting, much like our lake bled sky. I'm going to use the blue of the sky just to define this right hand edge of our snowman. I might actually take some of that graphite out. It's a little heavy with the graphite. I don't think it really matters with a painting like this, which is kind of loose and sploshy. It could be looser actually, but I don't mind that you can see how it's done. But I think maybe for this side of the snowman, I'm just gonna lightly take out those pieces, and so we can put in some sky just to define that side of his head. Right, now sky, I think I'm probably not going to put much colour in. It's just going to have a slight wash of blue over this side. I'm going to use cerulean for this. Fairly light. I'm going to just put it through his hat, just around the side. It's a little too grey. And then soften the edges. Oh, it would have helped if I'd cleaned my brush better. It's very, very subtle, that is very, very small amount of colour. And then I'm just going to put, just looking at what do I need. Just a little bit of blue, maybe here, just to define the sides of those trees. I should have got some clean water. And then softening all my hard edges. Just a teeny bit of colour. It's a good job we waited until this was dry. I could actually fairly, because my painting water's kind of grubby. It's warmed up slightly. That's very, very subtle. Maybe. I don't know, I actually kind of like that. Just a little more. Right, okay. Gonna leave that. Just puts a very slight piece of colour, and it really makes the side of his head shine out as white. Okay, now final touches. I think we're doing just a little bit of shadow on the sides of these buttons. And this is again cerulean or cobalt with a little ultramarine. Cobalt itself would be fine. Just a little bit of colour on the left hand side of each of these. Just to show that they're standing out a little. I think I'm going to leave the eyes maybe just soften those edges. There we go. Another couple of bits of extra colour. There's a slightly darker shadow in here, just where the two snowballs of his body meet. Is really smooshing that a bit. And I think there should be slightly more shadow just down where his head meets his scarf. This isn't on the photo because we put the scarf in ourselves. So I'm just imagining where that would go. Just slightly darker down here. Yeah, I don't think I should do any more with that. I think we're good with that. I think the wreath is fine. I could put a little bit of detail in where the baubles are because they do have some shadow to them, but I don't want to. And this is almost, there's very, very little colour in here. I don't want to lose the whiteness, so yeah, it will be fine. I do want to do something with these trees, I think. Let's make up a bit more of the dark. I mean, I think they're looking fairly okay as it is. So again, that's a lemon yellow, a little bit of black and some cobalt just to bring it slightly bluer. Don't want to make these trees dominant. But I'm just, so where the very dark bits are, just want to add in a bit more. A bit more detail. Carefully. Yes, I mean this may be a bad idea. There's this sort of ski slope thing here which I think needs to be divided up a little. Not a huge amount. Just a few bits of choppiness. If I do too much, I'm going to lose everything, and I don't want to do that. And slightly darker back here on the shadow side. Some of these darks. This bit here, which is looking a bit weird. I'm going to stand back and look at that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm actually improving it, to be honest. I think just some of the brush strokes lack a bit of precision. Well, I think I might have to just say it is what it is with this one. Right, now I'm just fiddling, so I'm going to put the brush down. Because right now I put this bit in, don't I? Oh yes, that's better, isn't it? Maybe a little bit over here. No, this isn't actually in here. Right, okay, put the brush down. Of course, I now I've seen one more thing I want to do. Right, okay. Now, I think I'm very close. Okay, I'm just, no. There's this transition here, which isn't very crisp. I'm tempted to go in and put just a little bit of blue in there, so it looks like there's another little snowbank behind. Maybe I can risk that. But this is really fiddling now. Yeah, I'm not sure that's actually worth doing. Okay. This bit here, I'm just going to put in a very, this is very light, I just feel it's very empty here. What I would probably, if I were going to sign it, I would sign it there. Let's just do that. Just to kind of join up those pieces. Right, okay, and that is time to put the brush down, I think. Okay, there he is. I think he's rather handsome. Phew, and there was actually quite a lot to do in there. There's still some sparkles on these shadow sides that probably should be lost, but I don't think I'm going to risk going back in to do those. Okay, there we go. Snowman. I think he's rather festive. I might put him on the wall for Christmas.